bringing the people behind our food to life.
So we're going to make a Parisian gnocchi. We're making a dough that's called a pâte choux dough. So we're going to cook this dough, put it in a piping bag, and then poach the gnocchi off and we'll be ready to go. So we're going to start with some water, butter, and some salt. We're going to bring this to a boil, melt the butter, dissolve the salt, and then we'll add some flour to it. So the Parisian gnocchi that we're making is a pâte choux dough. It's different than a potato gnocchi, so this one has flour in it and butter and eggs. And we like to do this one because it's really easy. You have a huge margin of error, so it's almost fail-safe once you get the base dough down. So the water, salt, and butter have come up to a boil. I'm going to turn it down to medium, and I'm going to add all of the flour at the same time. From this point on, you want to stir the dough the whole time. It's going to come together into a ball, and then it's going to slowly cook until it begins to get a little bit golden and the flour cooks out. So that's really the goal at this point now, is to cook the flour so you don't have raw flour. You can see it's pretty coarse right now, pretty rough. It's sticking to the edge of the pot a little bit. And at the point where it stops sticking and is one nice cohesive ball, we'll just cook it for a few minutes more and then we'll be done. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of moving it around the pot, smashing it, and just really trying to get all of the flour to cook out. And you can see it's already starting to come together and becoming really smooth. What you'll also notice is that it goes from being a flat mat to slightly glossy, a little bit shiny, and increasingly more smooth as the flour cooks out. So you can already see how it's changing color a little bit, and there's much less of the dough sticking to the edge of the pot. This is one of those doughs that you don't want to walk away from, otherwise you can guarantee it's probably going to burn. So it's nice and smooth. I'm just going to cook it out for a few more minutes. And then we'll transfer it to a stand mixer and put the rest of the ingredients in. Okay, I think we're there. I'm going to turn off the heat and just kind of let it set there for a second. But we can see that the dough's now nice and smooth. It's got a slight sheen to it. And it's nice and cohesive, okay? So we're going to take this and put it into the bowl of our stand mixer. All right, now we have our dough in the bowl. I'm going to mix it for just a moment to release some of the heat so it's not too hot. And then with it on low, I'm going to add some salt, some lemon zest, and some Dijon mustard. I'm going to let that mix really quickly to medium. Now I'm going to turn it back down to low. And I have my chopped herbs here that we're going to add. We'll let the herbs mix up really nicely. Turn it back down to low every time I add something. And I have my grated Parmesan. So now I'm going to add my eggs. Got 3 eggs here. I'm going to add the first egg and then let that mix all the way. Once it's all mixed in, I'll add the second egg. And we'll add the last egg. starts off really wet and loose. As the flour absorbs the egg, it'll get a little bit thicker. It's still going to be a pasty dough. We'll put it in a piping bag and then we'll poach it off. And we're going to stop it. All right, now we have our dough. It's all the same consistency. We're going to put it into a piping bag. And we're going to let that rest at room temperature for just a few minutes. So we have our pot of water up to a boil, and what I'm going to do now is add some salt, make it nice and salty. And at the same time, I'm also going to oil a cookie sheet that I have lined with some plastic wrap. And this is going to keep all the gnocchi from sticking. We've already worked hard enough to make the gnocchi, so we don't want to lose any of them. Once our salted water is up to a boil, I'm going to turn it down to a simmer. And the simmer is just below boiling. What I'm looking for is a pretty smooth surface with just some bubbles coming up off the top. All right, there we go. So now we're going to poach our gnocchi. We have it in our piping bag, and you can either use scissors or a paring knife. I'm going to use a paring knife today. And you want to work pretty quickly at this point, and I'll do about 15 or 20 at a time. And once they start to float, then I'll just let them poach for about a minute and then take them out, and they're fully cooked at that point. So I have the first ones just coming up to the surface now, and they're just going to float there. Once they all float, I'll wait a minute. So one of the great things about this gnocchi recipe is you can add any flavoring component to it that you want. The other thing that's really fantastic about this recipe is you can make these, set them aside, and then your dinner is really, really simple pickup. All right, so they've been poaching for about a minute extra. I'm just going to strain them and put them on that greased up cookie sheet. And then just kind of gently roll them around so that they don't stick. And we'll just push those aside for the next batch. Now we're going to make a sauce. We're going to make a pea and pesto sauce for our gnocchi that we made. So this sauce here is really simple. We're basically going to do a quick blender pesto, and we're going to add peas. Since it's summer, I have peas around. Easy to get any time of year if you want. I have some blanched basil here, and I'm just going to give this a rough chop. And basically I'm chopping it just so it blends up really easy. So there's our basil. I also have some parsley that I blanched, and the parsley adds a little bit of freshness, but it also helps keep it green. So there's that. Now I have some roasted garlic that I just put in some aluminum foil with some oil, roasted it in the oven for a couple hours, and this is what I have here, some puree. I'm going to add that garlic puree. I have some lemon zest here that we're going to add. I have my chopped herbs here. And then I have some peas that I'm going to add. And again, like I said, this is such a simple little pesto. We're going to add some black pepper and some sea salt. Any home blender will work. You can make it as smooth or as coarse as you'd like. It really just depends on what you want. And now I have some oil. And there we have a little quick English pea and basil pesto. I'm actually going to leave this at room temperature, and we'll just saute the gnocchi and just put that right on top of that. All right, let's cook some gnocchi. So I got a little bit of oil, and I'm going to heat the oil up under a pretty high heat. And once the oil is hot, then we'll add our gnocchi. My oil's hot. I'm going to add my gnocchi. I'm using a non-stick pan just to ensure that they don't stick, since I've worked so hard to get these gnocchi. Now that everything's hot, crackling, sizzling, sauteing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of butter. So, add some butter here. And what this will do is this will give it a little bit of a golden brown. It'll also give it a little bit of that great buttery flavor. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of salt to it. You could brown it as much as you want or as little as you want. So this one here, we're just going to give it a nice golden brown. As it starts to cook, the gnocchi also puff up a little bit. So once they puff up, you know that the inside's cooked. Here we go. So what I'm going to do is, since we did a pea pesto sauce, I'm just going to add a little bit of fresh peas that I had in the garden. Turn off the heat because everything else is cooked. Just warm them up a little bit. And you can see how we have a little bit of crispy golden brown. They're actually really good with the outside kind of crunchy. And we're ready to go. So we're going to plate an appetizer and an entree. And I'm just going to take my room temperature pesto, put some on a plate. Just like that. Really simple. I'm going to take my gnocchi and peas. Just like that. And since I got these peas out of the garden, I have some pea shoots here. So I'm just going to put a little bit of that on there also. And then, because everything seems to be better with cheese, we'll give it a little bit of Parmesan. And there we go. We've got Parisian gnocchi sauteed in some brown butter with a English pea and basil pesto, a little bit of pea shoots, and Parmesan cheese.
And we also want to make sure that people can see everything. This is right in the middle of the city. We're very accountable to the quality of our produce, how we're working with the neighbors, with the artisan farmers in the program. We want to make sure things are really quite transparent.